Up until the recent season of The Mandalorian, we only had two factions of royal guards to contend with, to actually compete, and it was kind of a lively debate. But now, with the Praetorian guards in The Mandalorian, things have shifted completely. We have three factions of guards right now. Those are the royal guards from the original trilogy, the Praetorian guards from the sequel trilogy, and the recent ones, the recent Praetorian guards in Mandalorian Season 3. I wanted to make this video specifically to dedicate it to all those fans who are debating who is the best. Now, in this video, we're going to talk specifically live action. When it comes to royal guards, I know that there's a lot of material out there. I've read them myself, even in Legends lore. I mean, we have comics depicting how Darth Vader personally trained the royal guards in horrendous, horrific conditions. Only the strongest survived. This would indicate that royal guards were at their best, top-notch. The problem with this is that they were never shown to be this in live action in the original trilogy. So we're gonna put them side by side in a match at the ending of the video, so I suggest you stick around, because to discuss that match, we need to talk about the Praetorian guards more so than the very much known royal guards. You see, the Praetorian guards are renowned for their intimidating fighting abilities. When you explore Star Wars lore, whether that be sequel trilogy or now The Mandalorian, I mean, they were practically capable of rivaling even Force sensitives, as we saw in The Last Jedi. At least they were able to stand toe-to-toe. We did not see that happening in The Mandalorian, unfortunately. I would have loved if, for example, Luke went up against the Praetorian guards. Not that they would pose a threat, but at least we would have gotten the gist of where they lie on the totem pole. However, there is a dark and mysterious backstory that surrounds the Praetorian guards. So as we saw, the Praetorian guards made their return in years of absence. I mean, The Last Jedi was 2017, so it's been a while, 6 years, that we last saw Praetorian guards be used. They were, needless to say, relentless, both in Episode 7 and Episode 8 of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. We essentially witnessed the grand plan that Moff Gideon has in store for the Imperial Remnant. We even see he is creating his own clones, his own Force-sensitive clones, and there is a myriad of speculation out there that who are the Praetorian guards really? They could even be the clones of Moff Gideon, who are Force-sensitive. These who we see on the screen are the successful ones. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that, but their identity, needless to say, is a mystery. Throughout both episodes, we see that 3 elite Praetorian guards come out and fight whoever is challenging Moff Gideon. At first, we see them systematically destroy Paz Vizla, then fight both Grogu and Din Djarin at the same time. So as we know by now, the Praetorian guards are meant to be a branch off of the Emperor's real royal guard, as we see in the original trilogy. That's what they're based on. We know that the royal guards were some of the best warriors in the galaxy. I mean, you have to be in order to protect the Emperor, who did not need protecting, of course, but just for appearances. That is true both in Legends and now in canon. Darth Vader's 2020 series showcases this perfectly. When Darth Vader left without his lightsaber, needs to contend with 2 royal guards who stand their ground against the mighty Darth Vader. In the end, of course, Vader prevails, but nonetheless, standing toe-to-toe with one of the greatest Sith Lords out there, it's a feat. But outside of the royal guards, it's interesting because the Praetorian guards were never mentioned or seen before the rise of the First Order. Only now do we understand by watching The Mandalorian Season 3 that actually they were first conceived with Moff Gideon and their Shadow Council. With what we saw from the Shadow Council, Moff Gideon and Halion, basically Thrawn's cronies in the end, I think that's what they're gonna end up being, we are seeing the rise of the First Order. We are seeing the creation of it, and it leads to the sequel trilogy conflict. It essentially, what I see it as, the Praetorian Guards are representing the next generation of royal guards who protected the Emperor. In that episode where Moff Gideon meets with the Shadow Council, we kind of learn more details about the Praetorian Guards, that they were essentially a gift from Admiral Thrawn, who Moff Gideon has questions for. You see the inner conflict. That thing is mysterious, but what the Praetorian Guards do next is fascinating, because during the culminating moment of Episode 7, Paz Vizla makes a stand in the Imperial hangar against 3 armed Praetorian Guards who are definitely ready for the Mandalorian. This from Paz Vizla coming off freshly fighting off trooper after trooper with his blaster machine gun. In the end, he faces them hand-to-hand combat with his vibro knife. However, despite Paz Vizla's dominant figure and fighting experience, even having a personal energy shield, vibro knife, and all that, he is systematically defeated by the Praetorian Guards. This shows you how pragmatic they are in their fighting. All 3 do not fight individually. It is practically choreographed, their maniacal way of just crushing you down level by level until they put Paz Vizla on his knees and kill him. Even their weaponry seemed advanced, their combat skills, and they finally bring an end to Paz Vizla. Essentially, this was the first real cameo of the Praetorian Guards, at least their prowess, because in the timeline, the second time the Praetorian Guards appear are, of course, in the throne room of Supreme Leader Snoke in The Last Jedi. So there's been a lot of questions pertaining these 3 Praetorian Guards in the Mandalorian series and those 8 in Snoke's throne room. From what we know, the academy that once upon a time trained the Emperor's royal guard no longer is in function. In Legends, remember, Darth Vader used to visit from time to time and crush anyone who was weak enough. It is, however, important to note that the Praetorian Guards underwent very similar training than the Royal Guards. However, the main difference from the Royal Guard, who were wielding vibroblades, force pikes, even at times blaster rifles, pistols, the Praetorian Guards only handled unique melee weapons. Weapons who were technologically upgraded versions of other primitive weapons from various worlds. They were essentially a combined version and an upgraded version at the same time. It's even been suggested, as I said, that these Praetorian Guards were clones of Moff Gideon, and at one point some fans even mentioned that their helmets are different versions of what we see from Snoke's Praetorian Guards, because their helmets are different. They kind of look like Mandalorian helmets. This is what led many fans to speculate that these guys, these Praetorian Guards, are Mandalorians themselves. This is why we see them on Mandalore serving Moff Gideon, who has been occupying this space on Mandalore for quite a while. Essentially, they are brainwashed, altered, and evil versions of Mandalorians serving Moff Gideon, Grand Admiral Thrawn, the Empire's needs as Praetorian Guards, completely entrenched in red armor. This goes in line with Snoke too, who personally altered their armor to keep them in a constant state of pain. This is how the Praetorian Guards were essentially trained and kept alert. Snoke believed that this state of pain heightened their senses, kept the Praetorian Guards alert at all times, wielding electro chain whips, even vibroblades, vibrovogues, all that. They were upgraded to be even deadlier in combat. What's interesting though is that Snoke's Praetorian Guards were easily defeated by Kylo Ren and Rey. And yes, they were wielding lightsabers. However, as we see in The Mandalorian, Din Djarin had trouble shooting the Praetorian Guards because even their armor, their red armor, was Beskar, so he had to shoot them underneath their helmet. As I said, the Praetorian Guards did not have an enjoyable training. Their existence essentially was that of Darth Vader. Palpatine maniacally tortured Vader on purpose to keep him angry and consumed by the dark side, and essentially this is what these guys did with the Praetorian Guards as well. In The Last Jedi visual guide, it is revealed that the Praetorian Guards are a group of 8 warriors that we see on Snoke's throne room, and unlike the large number of royal guards, there are only 8 Praetorian Guards who operate in pairs, or in this case, a group of 3. This is why they were trained to fight against Force wielders, because both Moff Gideon and Snoke knew that one day their ultimate enemy would be a Force Force user. In the case of Moff Gideon, he ended up being killed by Mandalorians. However, you must remember that Moff Gideon was still paranoid that Luke Skywalker would show up eventually like he did in Season 2. If he did, then the Praetorian Guards would be waiting for him. Snoke had the same idea, essentially, that one day Luke or somebody from the light would appear to fight him. Now, who is the best? Who is the most dominant? Is it the Royal Guards? Is it sequel Praetorian Guards? Or is it the Mandalorian Praetorian Guards? I have to say that this is the grand divide, because in the comics version, Royal Guards are pretty badass. It's not that easy to defeat them. They were elite warriors. But when it comes to live action, I have to say that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau did a masterful job of really showing what the Praetorian Guards can do. Rian Johnson did not do a good job of showing us the power of the Praetorian Guards in Snoke's throne room, because they get dispatched by Kylo Ren and Rey really easily. It's not that great of a fight, honestly. And the Royal Guards, as I said, have never been seen outside of comics. They've never been seen in live action doing really anything of noteworthy. So in live action, the Praetorian Guards of Mandalorian Season 3 take the cake. They are the best of the best.